Hello, scholars. My name is Joseph Ejike Oji. Tonight, our topic of discussion will be the international finance and trade. For tonight, we'll be focused on what we call the global or international monetary system. Generally speaking, what is called the global or the international monetary system is a name that we give or we use to describe a system of institutions and the mechanism for performing any of the following functions to foster world trade. 2, to manage the flow of financial capital. Then 3, to determine exchange rates. So let us begin by taking a quick look at the historical development of the international trade and finance. Let's start with the development of finance. International finance, a lot of scholars believe that they began about 5,000 years ago when the Babylonian cities rose to importance as centers of trade, especially trade between the Mediterranean Sea and the civilization of the East. There's a few key developments at the time, especially when it comes to the means of exchange. For instance, gold was used for transaction and as a store of value. I would say the beginning of 3000 BC, when the pharaohs ruled Egypt. Now, during that time, the centers of international finance also, as the time proceeded, the centers of international finance moved or shifted to the Greek city of Athens at around 500 BC. And then from there, it moved to the Roman Empire and Rome around 100 BC. Let me make sure you can see this screen. Yeah, I think you can see it. Okay, let's proceed it. Now, next is the financial centers also moved from northern European cities at the time to, this one happened around 1500s, when the financial centers shifted to northern European cities. And in more recent years, these financial centers have dispersed even more, to London, to New York, Tokyo, around 1500s. But today, the international trade takes place anywhere. In other words, the international trade takes place and international claims and payments can be settled around the clock. The currency market, for example, is a round-the-clock market. You can buy currency, sell currency anytime. There's no need for a fixed center. As a matter of fact, your laptop and internet is all you need to become involved in international transaction and payments. So it is no longer necessary to have a physical center, like a city, to carry out any form of international operations. And that is a very good development. Now, let's look at how the international monetary system evolved. We have looked at finance. How about the monetary system? I will describe them based on each period. The first period I'll be looking at is period before the World War I. The kind of monetary system we have in that time is called the gold standard. So prior to the start of the World War I in 1914, all the international monetary system operated mostly, I won't say all, majority of them operated mostly under the gold standard, whereby the currency of the major countries involved were convertible into gold. So they are converting into gold at a fixed exchange rate. So, for example, 1 ounce of gold might exchange for 20 US dollars, or one US dollar will be worth 1/12 of an ounce of gold, if that is the exchange rate between US dollar and gold. So each currency was backed by gold. So in other words, one US dollar was backed by 0.05 ounces of gold. I'm just giving you the example of how that works. So each currency, each dollar you have, there's 0.05 ounce of gold to back it. So in other words, it is like having a covered deal. $1, 0.05 ounce of gold. So that means that the country, US, must have enough gold to back each dollar they have. So another one, if I use France as an example, you can say that at that time, I'm just using a hypothetical example to show you how the gold standard works. So you might say that 1 ounce of gold might be worth 5 French francs at the time, meaning that 1 French franc is worth 0.2 ounce of gold. In other words, France must make sure they have at least 0.2 ounce of gold for each French franc. So even though it's a paper, but it is, people have confidence that they can either be paid with a French francs or with 0.2 ounces of gold. See? So the exchange rate was fixed. All major currencies are converted into gold at a fixed exchange rate at the time. So eventually, by the end of the 1800s, most countries adopted the gold standard. However, concerning with the World War I, most countries started, having problem with the gold standard, and some of them started leaving the gold standard. For example, the Federal Reserve Act of 1930 provided for the issuance of what is called fiat money, paper money, or fiat money. I will explain what it means in a minute. So this fiat money are not backed by gold or silver. So that means that not all of them are the currency and all the countries, some of the countries I would say, are backed by gold. But there's a reason for trying to move away from the gold standard because of some problems, which I will explain in a minute. But before that, let me explain what is called a fiat money. Now, we call them fiat money because their value are based solely on the government being able to achieve, that's the government of the country that have that currency, being able to achieve economic growth and maintain price stability. So, in other words, people have confidence that this money is backed by the government that produce that money. So, and it will be accepted for international payment because of the demand for that country's goods and services. So if the goods and services provided by that country is in high demand, to buy those goods, you have to change your money to that country's currency. Let me explain it briefly. Let's say that the country involved is United States, and they have a fiat money of dollar. So you know that to buy US goods, you have to change your money to dollar. And then you can then exchange the dollar for US goods and services. So that makes the US dollar acceptable. And traders from other countries or people from other countries can now accept US dollar because they know that they can use it to exchange, make international payment anywhere, because somebody who is receiving that money know that they can use it to buy services from the United States. So fiat money are not backed by gold, but only by the confidence in the country that issues that money. Now, why do countries start to move away from the gold standard by the end of the 1800s? A majority criticisms, there are many reasons they gave, or they're giving. The gold standard is is very rigid. I would say it's very rigid. So that which means that uh, the country, the volume of trade increased as countries keep growing. So as the volume of trade increased, and then that means the country have to get involved with trade with other countries. Now, each country that pays for the goods and services provided by other countries must have enough gold to back their currency. So as the volume of trade increases, the amount of currency increases, but the amount of goods available does not increase at the same pace. So that means that as the volume of world trade increased over the years, the supply of new gold will fail to keep the pace. Now, if I'm not sure that the amount of dollar you're paying me that you have enough gold to back it, or then that will make me not to want to accept it, the dollar in exchange when we're doing the in the world market, because you don't have that each dollar doesn't have enough ounce of gold to buy to back it up. So without any form of supplementary international money, the result means can lead to deflation. So that means, let's say that the US have only 400 ounces of gold, or let me say 400 million ounces of gold, but the volume of trade have increased to 2 billion, from 1 billion to 2 billion. So the US don't have enough gold that will back 2 billion dollars worth of trade. In other words, they will have to restrict the amount of international transaction to $1 billion, which is backed by 400 million ounces of gold. You know, so it will restrict the amount of trade they will do. The same thing with another country that have, let's say, I would say France have, for example, 500 million ounces of gold, which is backing 1 million, 1 billion francs worth of trade. Now, if the volume of trade increase as France grows, if the volume of trade increases from 1 billion francs to 2 billion francs, and that extra 1 billion francs is not, France doesn't have enough gold to back it up. They will have to restrict themselves to 1 billion worth of trade. If they insist on continuing with the extra 1 billion francs that is not backed by gold, it will lower the value of the francs. So now, because of this rigidity, the volume of trade cannot grow. And if the country continue to or insist on growing the volume of trade without having enough gold to back the currency up, it might result to a deflation. And when every country is doing it, it might lead to international deflation. A second criticism of gold standard was lack of international organization to monitor and report whether countries were deviating from the gold standards when it comes to their own best interest. For example, United States, for example, claim that each dollar is backed by 5 ounces of gold. Is it true? Do they really have enough 5 ounces of gold to back each dollar? There's no way of monitoring that. So everything was based on trust. So, which means that countries can follow the rules when it suits them. Otherwise, they will do something different. So the third criticism is that when all currencies are on gold standards system, world economic growth was restricted to the rate of increase in new gold production. Now, since gold was the only monetary reserve, now the volume of trade going up, the amount of gold available to back those trades is not going up at the same pace. So it, like I said, it made the gold standard very rigid and restrictive. So now this will take us to the third thing item with respect to international trade and finance development. from the period of World War One through the World War Two. So during this interwar period of 1915 to 1944, which encompassed World War One, the period in between, and then World War II. Some countries made attempts to go back to the gold standard, because even the gold standard, even though it is restricted, it ensures a stable currency. Many nations returned to the gold standard during the 1920s, only to go off the gold standard again because of the problems I've listed in the previous slides. So, and especially the problems that are associated with the Great Depression. So, a series of so many bank failures, and then the continued outflow of gold caused the United States to also abandon the gold standard by 1933, just like the other countries did. Now, some of them made attempts to go back to it, but they couldn't achieve it. And then they left it again. Now, so without gold standards, there's a, currency, and all the currencies are not pegged to one unit of exchange. It was clear that the world needed a new financial system that will work. Again, like I said, the gold standard was considered rigid. At the same time, some economists and policymakers were concerned that countries will devalue their currencies to boost trade. So that means if a country devalues their currency to boost trade, let me put it in this way. When a country devalues their currency, it is a kind of currency manipulation to make their goods and services cheaper. So when the country manipulates their currency in this manner, it often leads to unfair competition because it makes their exports more cheap and that of other countries more expensive. So that means they will have flow of money or trade to their country, into their domain due to that currency manipulation. So to avoid all this and have a monetary system that is trustworthy, a monetary system that works, etc., 44 countries send delegates to a conference that is held in Bretton Woods in New Hampshire in 1944. So during that conference, so many decisions were made. One of the decisions they made was that the US, of course, that time, United States have 67% of the world's gold reserve. So that gave the US a very big advantage during the conference. So the decision was made that the exchange rate system, which they now call the Bretton Woods system, was created, and all currencies ended up being linked to the dollar, US dollar, which is also linked to the gold. So that means since the US have the 67% of the world gold reserve, they have, a very good, I would say, competitive. Well, I won't use competitive edge. They have a very big advantage over other countries since they have immense reserve of gold. So that's why they made that decision. So in the Bretton Woods system, all currencies of the participating countries were linked to dollar, which is also linked to gold. So the dollar becomes the only currency that is in the gold standard, while the currencies of other countries that are participated in that Bretton Woods conference were now pegged to the US dollar through the pegged to gold through the US dollar. Yeah. So in the dollar immediately became the international unit of account after that conference, to the great economic advantage and also political advantage of the United States. So let's quickly look at the outcome of, take another look at the outcome of the conference. Like I explained a few minutes ago, the most significant development at this conference was the exchange rate agreement that is called the Bretton Woods system, in which all currencies of the participating countries will be tied to the gold through the US dollar via a fixed exchange rate system. For example, I would say a few things that we need to know about this new exchange rate system. The first one was that it requires a currency pegged to the US dollar, which was also pegged to the price of gold. Then all currencies ended up becoming linked to dollar, and the dollar was linked to gold. So in other words, any country, remember there are 44 of them that came to the conference. So all the participating countries in the US, in the Bretton Woods system, will hold their reserves in gold, either in gold or in US dollar, because the dollar was the only currency that was on the gold standards. So this method basically eliminated some of the criticisms associated with the gold standard before the Bretton Woods standard was developed. So let me explain how this worked with a few examples. During that time, among the outcomes is also that an ounce of gold was said to be equal to $35. So each participating country's currency was then set at par or fixed value in relation to the dollar. I use French as an example, France. So the French franc, for example, might be said to want 1/7 of US dollar. So now, so in other words, it is worth 1/7 of US dollar. How much ounce of gold is the French franc worth? In that case, the French franc will be worth, I'll show you in a minute, because 1 ounce of gold was equal to 35 US dollar. So French francs, which is 1/7 of US dollar, is worth how many ounces of gold? Let me show you how many ounces of gold it will be worth. Maybe 1/7. Put it this way. But actually, it is not the ounces of gold. Yeah, give me 1 minute. Sure. I'll show you this. So 1/7, then times 35. Since 1 ounce of gold is worth 35 US dollar. So 35. See, $5. $5. So if you want to exchange from US dollar to from French francs to US dollar, what you get is $5 worth of gold. In essence, 1 franc could exchange for $5 in gold, worth of gold. So US will give you $5 worth of gold in ounces. So that will become the exchange rate for French francs to US dollar. Again, let me explain. Since 1 French franc is 1/7 of US dollars, and given that 1 ounce of gold equals 35 US dollars, in that case, if you are converting from French francs to US dollar, so you're gonna be multiply 1/7 by 35, and that's what we did here to get $5 worth. $5. So 1 French franc was $5 US dollars worth of ounce of gold. So in other words, 1 French franc is $5 US dollars. But this is just an example. It's not that this is what it is what at that time. But this gives you an idea how you can change from French franc to US dollar, given the peg that we have to US dollar, which is also pegged to the ounces gold. So since this Bretton Woods system allows for the holding of gold and the US dollar as a foreign exchange reserve, this new system allow for less restrictive world economic growth. But then we had eventually we have a problem with this system. US now have to figure out a way to make sure that they have enough gold available to exchange for other currencies to that. So if a country goes through, before we go to that exact exchange, I want to explain this. So now every country now exchange is pegged to US dollar, which is pegged to gold. Now that ensures a stable currency for the participating countries. Now, sometimes a country might go into an economic crisis. And when they go into such crisis, they might want to attract more trade. Because more trade leads to increase the national income and the GDP, gross domestic product. So now, but if they cannot attract trade by devaluing their currency, what are they going to do? Since they're now pegged to the US dollar, which is pegged to gold, which means that the currency it cannot be devalued. Now they are going into economic crisis. What are they going to do to recover? So that is the problem. One of the problems of the Bretton Woods system. If a country goes through an economic crisis, how can it get out of it without devaluing its currency so as to attract trade? So to address this issue, two institutions were created. One of them is the International Monetary System, International Monetary Fund. So when countries that are in the gold standard have experiences economic crisis and they cannot devalue their currency to attract trade that will bring them out of the crisis, they can go to International Monetary Fund, which will now lend them money that will help them to build their economy and attract, since they cannot attract financing from other sources, so they can get loan from IMF to build back their economy. Another institution that was created is the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which we call the World Bank. This bank was supposed to help economic growth in developing countries who want to be or who are a member of the Bretton Woods system. But see, there's another problem after this, which will come under the negative side effect of the Bretton Woods system. So as good as it sounds on paper, just like communism, when you look at it on paper, it sounds very good, but in practice, it's not worth it. So same thing with the gold standard. So the reason the gold standard is that because of the fact that all countries that are involved are tied to the US dollar, which now is and the value of the currency is tied to gold from the US, and the gold reserve in US are not growing, even though the volume of trade is growing. So that become a problem since United States kept running deficits to fund the various projects of other nations. So this means that the amount of dollar is existent, keep increasing, but there's not enough gold reserve to back it up. So while the amount of dollar in existence kept increasing, gold reserve of US kept shrinking as much countries demanded gold in exchange for their dollar. So this became a problem. By 1960, the value of US gold stock was less than the amount of foreign holdings of dollars. So this caused concern. So this concern is in addition to the other problems, such as the incompatible role of US dollar, the conflicting sovereign goals of other countries, the excessive speculation on the dollar exchange rate markets, and also the reluctance of other countries to follow the exchange rate rules. All this problem, in addition to the fact that the volume of trade keep growing and the dollar keep growing, but gold reserve that UF has is not, is basically shrinking. It created a liquidity, confidence, and adjustment problem. So the Bretton Woods in general started experiencing problems. How can the US produce enough gold to back all the currencies of the world? So because of this problem, and they didn't have a solution to it. They didn't have an immediate solution to it. On 15th August of 1971, the United States, under President Nixon, terminated the gold standards, or I would say terminated the convertibility of the US dollar uh, into gold. So he didn't terminate the gold standard per se, but he terminated the Bretton Woods system. So when the President Nixon terminated the convertibility of the US dollar to gold, he essentially brought the Bretton Woods system to an end and rendered the dollar as a fiat currency. So anyway, even though the Bretton Woods system ended in 1971, we still experience some of the outcome of it. For example, especially when it comes to its influence on international currency exchange, and the trades through its development of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So these two institutions still exist, even though the Bretton Woods system is no longer exists. Now, this leads us to the era of flexible exchange rate system. So that started from 1973 to the present. So at this point, majority currencies were allowed to float. So yeah, the value of the currency now depends on the demand and supply for that currency. For example, if I want to buy oil for Nigeria, I have to exchange the dollar to Naira so I can pay it for the oil. So that increased the demand for the Naira. And that demand, when the increase for the demand is keep going up, then the value of our currency will appreciate because of the demand. For some countries that doesn't produce much, their currency doesn't have much value because there was low demand for that. So the exchange rate become floating, and that is very much better and flexible because if your country have a floating exchange rate, the value of the currency will be determined by the demand and supply of that currency. So by mid-70s, many countries are now in that type of exchange rate. However, there are countries, there's some problem with this exchange rate. I'll explain in a few minutes. Now, after some time, some countries try to manipulate this floating system by having what they call managed exchange rates, like what happened in Nigeria in 2015 when the current president Buhari took over. He decided that he wants, because Nigeria wasn't producing much, so there was really nothing to produce except oil. Most of the industry in Nigeria are either mothballed or are operating under, inefficiency. Many of them are not efficient or are not really viable. I'll explain that too. So because of that, the demand for Naira was low and value keep going down. So when Buhari took over, instead of reviving the economy, attracting investment so that there will be demand for the products the Nigerian economy makes, which will, in the long run, increase the demand for Naira and will cause the Naira to appreciate. Instead of doing that, he decided to peg the Naira exchange rate in what he called some form of capital control. So the problem with capital control is, I will explain it. Let me show you what he did. During that time, I think he pegged Naira to dollar, to a specific amount, value of a dollar amount. Let me try $1 to Naira. in 2015. So he said it pegged it at $1 equals 197 naira, which is artificial. You cannot peg, when you peg your currency this way, you must make available enough dollar to exchange for that currency. So, but because since this is Nigeria and dollar is not a Nigerian currency, he cannot print dollar. So he had to get it from somewhere. So that means all the foreign reserve that Nigeria have, that is in dollar, you have to deplete it so that you have enough dollar exchanging for naira. At a point, there won't be enough dollar exchanging for naira. So that means you cannot, that peg will not work, since now, if it will lead to the growth of black market. Why will I go to the government central bank or bank to exchange $1 for 197 naira when I can go to the black market and get it at the actual value, which is of more than 197 naira. So because of that became a very scarcity of dollar in Nigeria. So at a point, the government tried to get dollar from any source. So when somebody in the United States, for example, send money to their relative, send dollar to their relative Nigeria, if they go to the bank will not give them dollar anymore. They give them the naira at the government exchange rate. So the dollar becomes very scarce. So that's one of the things, problem with capital control, such as pegging the currency. So what Buhari did, I think it lasted till 2016, no, about 2017, I believe, made dollar so scarce and caused naira to even depreciate more. At the point, let me show you the current value of naira now so that you can see what I'm talking about. So you can say $1 to naira in general, the official rate is $1 equals $418. $1 equals 418 naira 69. Sorry about that. $1 equals 418 naira 69 kobo. This is the official rate now, because eventually the Buhari government realized that they cannot continue with the peg, so they allow the naira to float. So when it will go on the official rate, this is what you're gonna get. But if you want the black market rate, let me show you. Yeah. If you want the black market rate, it's gonna be $1 to naira black market rate. You can see the difference. Have it rate.com. You can see $1 becomes 660 naira rate. So you can see different I would say dealers. You can see their rate. 660, 670, depending on who you go to. See? Whereas the official rate is 400 and something naira, but then it's 660 or 670, 680 in black market. So now, having explained this, using Nigeria as an example, I will now go back to the floating exchange rate that we are doing. So in fact, the transition to floating exchange rates was relatively smooth, and it was certainly timely, because the flexible exchange rate made it easier for economies or countries to adjust to more expensive oil at that time, because that time the OPEC also increased the price of oil overnight. So the countries that are affected, especially the European countries, they're able to adjust to more expensive oil when the price suddenly started going up in 1973. To make sure you're seeing this. Now, next is the problem with the flexible exchange rate system. Well, every system has its problem. Now, and the flexible exchange rate system is one of them. So the problem is hard that there's a possibility of wide swings in the value of the currency in response to supply and demand. So the currency can go up and down very, I'll say that I call it wide swing. That's the best way to explain it. So even a statement by a central bank of a country or an increase in the interest rates or whatever the Federal Reserve or central bank does can cause the currency to either increase significantly or decrease significantly. So it is susceptible to this wide swing. And this will result in uncertainty in world trade. Today, many countries allow their currencies to float against others, including Australia, Japan, Canada, United States, UK, and so on and so forth. Now, European Monetary Union allows the euro to float. But there are still some countries that try to manage their currency, like India, China, and Russia. They employ what they call a semi-floating or managed floating system that involve government intervention. So what happened is that, just like the experience of Nigeria, those countries, their currency does not exchange at its true value. And this makes it very difficult to trade on those currencies because it doesn't, the true value, is not reflected in the currency, in the currency market, since part of it is value is based on their government doing some kind of financial engineering or capital control to make the value of their currency look good. So now, like I said, the trades, those countries, when they do that, they often make the black market is very vibrant in those countries. You can still have the currency having trade. The currency exchange market in those countries become two types of market: the black market and the official rates. Unlike countries like United States, Japan, Canada, that one is completely floating. So the market they usually have one single currency market. That is, the value of the currency determined by the demand and supply of what they produce, which lead to the demand and supply of their currency at any particular point in time. And those currencies are the one that you can easily trade on them in the world, in the foreign exchange markets. So I believe I hope you enjoyed this lecture tonight. And if you do, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel because we still have more lectures coming. And when you subscribe, you'll be notified each time a new lecture is available. Thank you for listening and have a good night.